Welcome to Mind Over Matter. Today, we have Dr. Debi Silber, founder of the Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute, best-selling author, and creator of National Forgiveness Day. Her groundbreaking research reveals how unhealed betrayal doesn't just wound the heart, it seeps into our health, work, and relationships, sometimes years after the event. Tonight, we'll unpack how to recognize those hidden events and more importantly, what it takes to finally heal. Welcome to the show. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to our conversation.
So, Dr. Devi, betrayal is something many people think they have moved past. How can someone tell if an old betrayal is still silently affecting their health or relationships?
It's going to show up in your work, in your health, in your relationships in these ways. In relationships, we'll see it in one of two ways. The first is a repeat betrayal. The faces change, but it's the same thing. So we go from boss to boss to boss, friend to friend to friend, partner to partner to partner. And we're thinking, is it us? Yes, it is. Not in that it's our fault, in that it's our opportunity. There's a very big lesson that needs to be learned. Maybe the lesson is just understand already that you are lovable, worthy, and deserving. Learn that you need better boundaries in place, whatever it is. Until and unless you get that, you'll have opportunities in the form of people to teach you. The other way we see it in relationships is where the big wall goes up. We've been so hurt that we're unwilling to risk that level of vulnerability and being hurt again. So we'd rather keep people at a distance than take that chance. In health, we see it in the form of stress-related symptoms, illnesses, conditions, disease. You can go to the most well-meaning doctor, coach, therapist to manage a stress-related issue. And at the root of it is an unhealed betrayal. We see it at work too. You deserve that raise or promotion, but let's say your confidence was shattered. So you don't have the confidence to ask, or you want to trust that boss, that coworker, that collaborative partner, but the person you trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How do you trust that boss, that coworker? It shows up everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some subtle signs that people often miss?
Well, the signs can be in the symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome. So we've had over 100,000 people take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. I'm happy to share some of the symptoms if you want me to. Would you like me to share the symptoms?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's striking. Like how the body and life can be echoing pain. Then when the mind insists it's over.
Yeah. So it shows up. I mean, it's there for decades until and unless we heal it. We had a woman, she was in her mid 80s and she had a 70+ year digestive issue. 5% of everyone betrayed has a digestive issue. 70+ years she had a digestive issue. She was adopted. They didn't tell her it was that sort of thing. 2 weeks into our program, she healed from a 70+ year digestive issue. That's what happens when you get to the root of the problem. But here, I'll read some of the stats from the post-betrayal syndrome quiz. So now imagine let's say it was a partner who broke your heart in high school, or a family member who did something when you were a kid, or something more recently. This shows up and stays until and unless you intentionally and deliberately heal it. So imagine 100,000 people, 78% constantly revisit their experience, 81% feel a loss of personal power, 80% are hypervigilant. I mean, that's just exhausting. 94% deal with painful triggers. The most common physical symptoms, 71% have low energy, 68% have sleep issues. I mentioned the digestive issues. 7% have weight changes. So maybe in the beginning, you can't hold any food down. Later on, you're emotionally eating. The mental symptoms, 78% are overwhelmed. 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief. 62% can't concentrate. So imagine you can't concentrate, you're exhausted, you don't feel well because you have a digestive issue. You still have to work. You still have to raise your kids or take care of your parents, elderly parents. That's not even emotionally. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are really angry. 79% are stressed, just a few more. Here's why I wrote my book, Trust Again. 84% have an inability to trust. 7% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. They put the big wall up, keep people out. The 2% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how. And what I sort of mentioned before was that what's even more staggering about these numbers, it's not even necessarily a recent betrayal. This could be from something that happened decades ago. The good news is you could heal from all of it. That was the third discovery made in my study.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Did you want to hear about the third discovery?
Yes, please.
Okay, so that was the most, for me, the most exciting. And what we learned was while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many people do, if we're going to fully heal, meaning those symptoms I just shared to this completely rebuilt place where we rebuild our lives and ourselves, we will move through 5 proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every stage, and we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable.
Right.
Did you have
I
a question about that, or?
it's just like really fascinating.
Yeah. Do you want me to share the stages? What would you like?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this is all we do within the PBT Institute. This is what I certify all of our certified PBT coaches in. I certify them in the 5 stages. I'll give you just a real boiled down version. So stage 1 is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody was this heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, and kind of neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual feeling and being. If a table only has 2 legs, it's going to be easy for that table to topple over. That's us. Stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, discovery day. This is the scariest out of all of the stages. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. So you just got the news right here that forever changes your life. You've ignited the stress response. So now you're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease, and your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. You just can't really understand what happened. It makes no sense. And the bottom has bottomed out on you, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. So this is terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything or anyone in order to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. This is the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this? Where do I go? Here's the trap, though. Stage 3 is the most common place we get stuck. And most people are stuck in this stage. And here's why. Once we've figured out how to survive our experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma we just came from, we think it's good. And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know there's a stage 4 and 5, we plant roots here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. And 4 things happen. We start getting all of those small self benefits. We get our story, we get to be right, we get someone to blame. And so we stay. And now because we're here longer than we should be, now the mind starts doing things like, well, maybe you're not that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So we plant even deeper roots. And now because we're here, too long, these are the thoughts we're thinking. Well, this is the energy we put out, and like energy attracts like energy. So now we're attracting people and circumstances and even new relationships to confirm this is where we belong. And because this is terrible and we don't feel good here, but we have to get through our day right here, we start numbing, avoiding, distracting. So we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, to just get us through the day. And we do it for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years later and say, that drinking you're doing or that emotional eating or whatever, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they look at me like I'm crazy and they'd say it happened 20 years ago. But all they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But also, how does that discovery change the way we approach healing?
How does that discovery, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the rest.
How does that discovery actually change the way we approach healing?
Well, that's only stage 3. And if someone moves through the 5 stages, they completely heal. Do you want me to get you to stage 4 and 5?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So if you're willingness is a big word right here, to let go of the story, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do. You move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Right there in that decision, you're starting to turn down the stress response. So you're not healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage that was going on in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved. If you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, Your stuff's not there. It's not quite cozy yet, but it's this hopeful excitement. And it feels like that. But it's interesting. If you were to move, you don't take everything with you. And what I found, you don't take those things that don't represent who you're ready to become in this new space. And what I found was there's this one spot as people go from stage 3 to stage 4. If your friends weren't there for you, if whatever, you don't take them with you. So it's a very personal space. Anyway, when you've settled into this space, you've made it cozy, you've made it kind of mentally home, you move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise, things like that. You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now you do. The mind is healing. You're making new rules, new boundaries based on the road you just traveled. And you have a whole new worldview based on everything you see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of that table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating to see science confirming what so many feel but can't explain.
Yeah, this is science-based. We're the leading certification for health, life, business, and leadership coaches because we're certifying people in betrayal recovery and moving them through these 5 proven predictable stages. Because think about it, if let's say you're a life coach and your client is struggling with, they're struggling with their mindset or something. Well, very likely there's an unhealed betrayal at the root of it. Or let's say there's a business coach and their client is struggling with making money. Well, maybe they lost confidence because of an unhealed betrayal, or maybe they're a health coach and the person's health is struggling, right? Because of the stress response caused by this unhealed betrayal. So we're really working with a lot of different types of coaches now to move through our certification, because this way their clients have such a deeper, more profound transformation because they're getting to the root of the problem besides just, doing traditional things that they would normally do. They haven't looked at betrayal in the past as a reason why their clients may be struggling, but they're finding more and more that is in fact the case with many of them.
Yeah. And when betrayal is unhealed, you say it impacts not only the health but also work and success.
Mhm.
How does that connection show up in someone's personal and professional life?
Yeah. It's going to show up in their professional life in so many ways. Like, for example, you heard me say that 84% have an ability to trust. Well, think about it. There's going to be impaired team collaboration, resistance to feedback, increased conflict and misunderstanding. If they have 88% struggle with extreme sadness, well, they're not going to be as motivated or as engaged. They're going to withdraw from colleagues, it's going to have an impact on their creativity and their problem solving. 47% have weight issues and digestive issues. Well, those physical challenges will affect job performance, increase medical leave, impact on their professional image. I can go on, but it's each of these symptoms directly because of the betrayal is affecting their work performance, their morale, their productivity, their bottom line.
That makes sense. And also, have you seen transformations in careers once people actually healed?
Absolutely, because first of all, mentally, they're more clear. They're more clear-headed. They're making better decisions. They're making decisions from a place of strength and clarity versus scarcity and fear. They're less anxious. They're less hyper-vigilant. They're not micromanaging because they've learned to trust. They have more energy. They look better because they don't have to eat emotionally anymore. They've taken care of the real issue. So now they're more confident as they go out and sell their product or program. So they're actually making more money. They're open to different ideas that they didn't have access to when they were stuck in their trauma. There is an absolute, complete, and direct connection to business success and healing from unhealed betrayal.
Yeah, it's powerful to think of healing not just as emotional repair, but also as unlocking potential.
Yeah. There's my last book, The Betrayal Recovery Roadmap, was all about how these unhealed betrayals are affecting people at work. And people think, okay, well, I'll just keep it outside of the workplace, but it's impossible. And even though it happened outside of the workplace, it's directly affecting the workplace. And so many businesses are spending millions of dollars on healthcare costs for their people. And actually, even a lot of them are paying for them to see a therapist or a counselor of some kind. And we have the proof that sometimes those therapists and those counselors, while well-meaning, they're not highly skilled in betrayal. And it's actually rooting them to the place where people get stuck in stage 3, because that client or that patient is feeling heard and validated and understood every week that they go, week after week. They're not an inch closer to moving to stage 4. So all they're doing is unloading and feeling heard and understood, but that's it. And so companies are actually paying very often to keep people stuck. Of course, it's unknowingly, but when they instead have their people move through the 5 stages, they get best talent back. They get engaged employees. They get people who are creative and energetic and productive. So it's a very different experience when someone heals from betrayal as opposed to hoping it stays out of the office or just having them, let's say, see a counselor or a therapist who doesn't really understand betrayal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Also, forgiveness is often seen as the end goal of healing betrayal. Do you think forgiveness is always necessary, or can healing happen without it?
Yeah. And, as the founder of National Forgiveness Day, I'm a big believer in forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean reconciling. It doesn't mean you're setting yourself up for it to happen again. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean, any of those things. It means that you value yourself enough to release the power all that pain has over you. So forgiveness has very little to do with the other person. It really is that we're ready to let go of all that it's kept us from doing. So it helps us heal physically, mentally, and emotionally. If you choose to reconcile, well, reconciliation has a lot to do with the other person, but forgiveness, not at all. It accelerates your healing, but it does not mean that you need to reconcile at all. Because if that person hasn't transformed to the extent they could, or like how the betrayed can totally transform, the betrayer can as well. We have a program for the betrayer, a rebuild program, and I see it all the time. They have the ability to change just as much as the betrayed. And then there's tremendous opportunity. But if they're not changing, reconciliation then only brings more pain to the betrayed. So forgiveness is just for them, just for their sake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And when forgiveness is possible, how do you define it in a way that doesn't minimize the hurt?
Like I said, forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. It's when you just decide that you're worth more than having that other person take your emotional energy as well as your physical health, because it takes such a big toll. So when we realize forgiveness is truly about us and about setting us free, letting go of the burden, it's almost like we've been carrying around like a 500-pound backpack and we decide to set it down. And that's what it feels like when we forgive, and the body responds beautifully. The body starts to heal, because when we're withholding forgiveness, it's like that saying, drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. That's really what happens. But it's the most important part of this is to really understand that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's really about you realizing that you're worth the freedom in your mind to not carry this any longer.
Yeah. And that perspective reframes forgiveness as freedom, not as a favor to the betrayer.
Yeah. It's, betrayal is one of the most painful of the human experiences. And there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done in order to heal from it. Very different than other traumas. That was the first discovery made in my study. And when we treat it like just a regular trauma, we don't heal. When we treat it in the way that it's meant to be treated, and that's by moving through the 5 stages, it can absolutely be a catalyst for our greatest transformation. And that's trauma well served.
Yeah, 100%. Someone listening right now who feels stuck in pain from a betrayal that happened years ago, what's the very first step they can take today?
Yeah, I would say, you've heard me share the stages. You're likely in stage 3 if it's been a very long time. And stage 3 is actually a choice. The worst of it happened already. You owe it to yourself to move through the 5 stages. And it's all we do within the PBT Institute. So just whether it's just even listening to my podcast From Betrayal to Breakthrough, or visiting the pbtinstitute.com and reading our blogs, or joining one of our programs, we have everything the research proved will help you heal. It's just a choice.
Yeah, and that makes the path feel less overwhelming, like small steps leading to a very big freedom.
Definitely.
So, what an illuminating conversation with Dr. Debi Silber reminds us that betrayal may cut deep, but it doesn't have to define the rest of our lives. Healing is possible, and with the right framework, transformation can ripple through every part of who we are, our health, our work, and our relationships. If you're carrying old wounds, take one step today towards release. Your breakthrough may be closer than you think.